You have to understand that if you go back to the mindset you used to have, you're going to get the results you used to have. And although it might seem easier and it might seem safer to fall back into what's familiar, there's a reason you wanted to outgrow that in the first place. There's a reason you wanted to get to where you are today.
What about me, my character, or our relationship is bothering you lately that you wish didn't, but it still sort of does? And so what you can do is present this to your partner and say, I would like to do check-ins. I think it's important. And I know it'll help us improve our relationship.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1185. Who can you be the real you around today? For episode number 1186, we often fall back into what's familiar. So the title is based off of a question that I received, and I think we received as a group. But as you know, I don't know if we've explained this. We probably didn't. We don't do a great job of housekeeping around here. But we stopped doing the live podcast, and we stopped doing the Q&A that was associated with a live podcast. The episode that used to be a live podcast will be something completely custom. But what we want to do is take questions from the community and then turn them into an episode. You never know who might have the same question as you. So all of the questions will remain anonymous. We're not going to share your first and last name. Occasionally, maybe we'll share a first name just for context, but we will make sure that it is the most anonymous it can be. So if you have a very, very specific name, I won't share it because people might be able to piece who it is. If your name is Bob, maybe I'll share it because there's however many Bobs. Okay? Did I say it well?
If you do have any questions for Kevin and I that you want us to answer on this show, on this podcast, Next Level University.
Global Top 100 podcast. It's global. It'll be heard all over the world.
140 plus countries. 140 plus countries all over the world. But seriously, submit your question to Kevin or myself. You can DM us on Instagram, DM us on Facebook. You can email us, alan@nextleveluniverse.com or kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. We will make sure that those questions, we will pick the very best ones to answer on this show. So please reach out. Please reach out.
And maybe at some point we'll have an intake form on the website. I think that's eventually where we'll go because it'll be easier than
definitely
everything else. So
I will let our web developer know that. Perfect. Alessandro. I will let Alessandro know that.
Thank you, Alessandro. You're the best. So this actually has something to do with something we talked about earlier in the week, mindset. So somebody said, when you're working on mindset, your mindset specifically, how do you combat that little voice in the back of your head that keeps telling you the opposite and tries to keep you in your old patterns? I told Alan, it's interesting. I should have said this. I said, honestly, Alan, I'll read the questions. I was going to say I will read and stumble through the questions, but I didn't. That's what's going to happen, most likely.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
When you're working on your mindset, how do you combat the little voice in the back of your head that keeps telling you the opposite and tries to keep you in your old patterns?
I would prefer you went first on this one. Because
then that's fine then.
I think that because of the self-belief piece, I don't feel like I have as big of a critic in terms of like, you can't do it, it's not going to work. I tend to be more optimistic, so go ahead.
Honestly, I would say that two things. Number one, you have to try to give yourself the same advice that you would give somebody else. You would never tell somebody else not to do something because they're a little bit afraid. You would try to put wind into their sails and say, look, you did it before and it went fine, right? What are the odds it's not going to go as well this time? That's part number one. I think the second part of it is you have to understand that if you go back to the mindset you used to have, you're going to get the results you used to have. The reason most of us have many of the results we have in our lives is based on the mindset that we show up with every single day. And although it might seem easier and it might seem safer to fall back into what's familiar, there's a reason you wanted to outgrow that in the first place. There's a reason you wanted to get to where you are today. So you have to make sure that you're checking in with that and understanding, oh, okay, I made a lot of shifts in order to get from where I was to where I am today. If I let any piece of me revert into who I used to be, I'm probably going to end up living a life that looks similar to that.
Kev, can you give me an example of a mindset where like the critic is saying something negative?
I mean, something along the lines of, and I've gotten this before in my mind, there's no point in doing it. Nobody's going to listen anyway. Like, especially in the beginning of the journey, it's like, why do we, we're doing our 5th episode of the day. Like, nobody's going to listen to this anyway. What's the point? I get that in the beginning.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point?
How do I answer this? First and foremost, I want to do a much better job of being more aware of contextual advice. This podcast, I want to be a guide for everyone, and it's important to frame things. So for me, I tend to be overly optimistic, and for me, I actually have to interrupt my mindset and say, wait a minute, is this actually going to go as well as you think it's going to go? Like, what am I missing? What might I be missing? Like, so for me, I don't usually have the, why would anyone listen to this? That's not, no one's going to listen or whatever. But what I will say is that if you are similar to me, if you're out there listening and you resonate more with me than Kevin, most likely you're overly optimistic. We all are overly pessimistic or overly optimistic. Very few people are perfectly accurate with their own capabilities or outcomes. It's a optimism or pessimism bias. So if you're more like me, you actually have to do the uncomfortable thing and say, honestly, what if I'm actually not as good as I think? What if I don't communicate as strongly as I think I'm going to? What do I need to prepare and shore up? What if it snows? I'll give you this perfect example. We co-hosted an event a while back, and we had a team member say, what if it snows? Because it was in the middle of January. And I remember thinking, I told Kev, I said, I would never have thought of that. Like, I just don't think negative enough. I don't think like what's going to go wrong. I'm usually thinking things will work out, and they're not going to work themselves out. So it's important. Kevin and I always drive to 5. My second answer to the question, if you are on Kevin's end, it's almost like you have to try to draw a new hypothesis. You have to presuppose that your mindset is inaccurate, even though all of the evidence might have pointed that way. So, for example, what's the point? No one's going to listen anyway. Well, okay, what is no one? If 15 people listen, is that good or is that bad? And I think at the end of the day, you also have to be careful about who you're comparing to. So at the beginning, 15 listens on a single episode is actually really good. If we got 15 listens on an episode, we would consider that bad, but that's because we've been doing this for 5.5 years. And so try to be more holistically aware. And yeah, ask yourself the simple question, am I overly optimistic or am I overly pessimistic? And how can I try to think more accurately? I think the mindset to adopt, I think, is I want to think as accurately as humanly possible about myself, about others, and about the world.
I think the last thing, too, is you have to understand that whether you want to believe it or not, your mind is going to try to keep you safe. And what's safe is familiar. The most familiar thing is usually the safest thing, even if it's not the path to fulfillment for most of us. And to your point, Alan, you got to take a step back and reframe that and say, okay, why do I actually want to revert? Like, what is it? Is it comfort? Is it safety? Is it familiarity? Am I overwhelmed? There's a lot of questions that you'll have to dig through. Really, I mean, it really is a new level of awareness that you probably need to have. Every time you level up your awareness, you have to have a new level of awareness on what created the growth, what created the perspective, and how do you make sure you don't fall back into that. It's just never-ending. It's a never-ending process. Lifelong, some would say.
The drive to 5, Kev?
Yeah?
Is what this is about. And that's actually why these Q&As are so cool, because you're going to get both perspectives. The drive to 5, what we mean by that for the new listeners, the 10s are overly confident and arrogant, and they think it's all going to just work out. The best way to describe the drive to 5 is the 10 out of 10 doesn't think they need a mentor or a coach. The 0 is too afraid to get one. And I guess think of the answers to this question. What Kevin just said about it's going to keep you safe. The 10 out of 10 it's keeping them safe to pretend they don't need any help, to pretend that they're going to win. It almost takes away the need to actually prepare, to actually try, to actually get out there. The 10 out of 10 doesn't even think they need to try. The 10 out of 10 might not even look at the numbers. The 0 out of 10 wouldn't even do the episode because they don't think they're going to win anyway. And in both cases, it keeps you safe. It eliminates you from feedback. That's really what it is what's the feedback I need? Maybe that's the question. I'll answer the question with a question. What's the feedback I need?
I'm excited for this second question because I think I got this yesterday. No, I got it Friday. I was just listening to an episode. I won't give the exact one, but I was just listening to an episode that you guested on, and I have a question. In the episode, you said that you dated Taryn and then you broke up and you reconnected later. If you know you have started a relationship too soon, how can you end it while saying you want to be open to connecting again? I really like someone I just started dating, but they're going through a divorce and it feels too soon. So the question is, how can you end a relationship while saying you want to be open to connecting again?
Wow. Well, I think you opening again probably makes the most sense since you literally did this.
This is what I said. I said, number one, thank you so much for listening to the episode. And number two, thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate it very much. I said, I think there's two understandings. Number one, just because it's not right for right now does not mean it can't be right eventually. But I said, the important thing that I think I did that really served me, and it's interesting because we had friends over on Friday and we were actually talking about this. I said, honestly, all I did was tell the truth. I just told Taryn, I said, hey, look, it seems like you and I are in different places in life. And honestly, I don't know what I want, but I do know I don't want to lead you on. I'm not sure if I want a long-term relationship right now. I'm not sure if I'm capable of one. I'm going through a lot of stuff. I'm trying to figure out my life. I just don't want you to have to be along for that ride. And I was just very, very honest. I was very, very honest. But I didn't plan on reconnecting. There was no, but I'll reach out in the future if it feels aligned. Or there was none of that. It was just, I just want to be honest and I want to let you go do your thing. And that's what I said to this person. I pretty much said, I don't know that there's a way to do it with the hope of reconnecting in the future. I think you have to be honest and you have to express your side and you have to go work on yourself, and this person has to work on themselves. You follow each other on social media. You can keep an eye on what's happening and you can reach out in the future. I don't necessarily suggest that you preface it with, I'll reach out in the future though, because then it's like, well, why not now? Well, now's not the right time. Okay, well, when will the right time be? Well, I don't know. It's like, I don't think it's healthy to wait around. I think you got to get out there and work on yourself and experience whatever it is you feel like you need to experience in life.
Nothing grows on the fence is the quote that I often say. I think it's important to Kevin's point, just be very, very, very honest with yourself. It's interesting. You can only be honest with other people if you're honest with yourself first, because we tell ourselves stories. We've all done this, right? It's like, I overate yesterday. Okay, well, why? Well, because I love ice cream. It's like, well, what's the real reason? Okay, I had an emotional day and I'm an emotional eater and I love ice cream. Okay, well, what's underneath that? It's like, well, I also, had Halo Top and I love it and I have Oreos in the cabinet and I bought the Oreos. There's a lot of layers to all of this. And so you can only be as honest with other people as you are with yourself. That's my point. You have to be, whoever asked that question obviously is being very honest with themselves. Otherwise, they'd tell themselves a story they are ready. And it sounds like the person who asked the question is thinking the other person's not ready. Is that true?
Yeah, it seems that way.
Okay. You know what the truth probably is, and I could be wrong. Again, you search for yourself. I'm not going to presuppose I know your truth. What the truth might be is that you want to tell this other person that you don't want to be with someone who is currently going through a divorce, and you don't want to, you probably don't want to pressure them to jump right into another relationship. That's most likely what's going on underneath all of this. And if that's the case, but you also are afraid to cut it off completely because you think there's a great opportunity in the future. And so I guess to your point, Kev, and this is the hardest thing in the entire world, genuinely, is just being so honest about this, where it's like, listen, I like you a lot, so much, in fact, that I really think this could be something special, but this is hard to say, but I also don't want to be a part of this divorce process. And I don't want you jumping into another relationship, because then what if you spend the rest of your life thinking that you just went from relationship to relationship to relationship and didn't really find yourself? So it's very hard to say all that, particularly to someone that you might not know that well. And so vulnerable communication, humility, courage, and vulnerability. The humility is there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking Kevin the question. The courage needs to be there. That's probably the piece I would end with, which is say the truth and trust that the truth will allow things to align the way they're supposed to. I really am starting to understand at 34 years old, not all of them, but a lot of the causes of pain in my life usually came from some distortion of truth, whether it was me or other people. And instead of just being really honest of, like, I'll use an example of one of my friends. Like, one of my friends I don't have anything in common with. We don't have anything in common anymore. And this other person isn't into self-improvement, and growth and goals is really my whole world. And I'm scared to tell that other person, honestly, I don't really spend any time with people who aren't goal-oriented and growth-oriented. And I don't really want to be completely honest, because I'm afraid all they're going to hear is, you don't love me, I'm not good enough, XYZ. And so it takes a lot of courage. But what's interesting is, what if that person's like, wait, I have all these other goals and dreams. I want to talk goals and dreams. Like, you'll never know unless you do it. And so I've been leaning into a lot of that lately with friends, with family. It's brutal, really, really difficult. But I think that you can trust that it will probably end up better than you think. I'm optimistic when it comes to goals and dreams, but I'm actually fairly pessimistic when it comes to trusting that other people aren't going to hate me when I tell them uncomfortable truths. And usually it ends up actually better than I thought when I express uncomfortable truths with people. Not always, but that's my advice, is just admit the truth to self to the best of your ability, and then have the courage to say it and let the chips fall where they're gonna.
Bonnie here. I just wanted to share my experience with group coaching and some of the things that I got out of it. So going into group coaching, I was not tracking any habits at all. And so now some of them have become habits. I'm happy to say I wake up, I have a glass of water without even thinking about it anymore. So now I think it's probably time to gear up. I highly encourage people to jump into group coaching. There's so much information, and so stick with it and carry on, and your life will be better for it.
I follow a lot of, whether they're therapists or counselors, relationship therapists, sex therapists on Instagram. And it's funny when they say it like this, but it makes a lot of sense. One of the first things they say when they get a question is, have you talked about this with the person yet? Or are you looking for an answer outside of communicating? Like, are you just hoping I tell you something that you can do behind the scenes that's going to make all this go away? Or have you actually started the conversation yet? Because that's usually where it starts. And like I said, my intention was not to get back with Tara. And it was just like, I don't know what I want right now. I'm about to go to Virginia. I'm going to be away for 3 months. Like, I don't know how to do any of this. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm a bodybuilding bro. I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on. So, and it ended up...
In hindsight, why do you think that because I remember you talked to me about this. For those of you who don't know, Kev and I were recording, and we were getting Chipotle.
Yeah.
And we were driving in the Sub, the WRX, the Rex. And I remember you saying, like, does it sound like I closed that door too quickly? And I remember saying, honestly, yeah, I think so. I honestly think that could have been something great.
Yeah.
And obviously I was right. But
I throw that in
why
there,
did you leave? Why did you, what?
Had to throw that in there, huh?
Yeah, no, sorry.
I'm just kidding.
But like, yeah, I did. I remember thinking like, no, it does seem that way.
Yeah.
Why do you think you did it in hindsight? Do you think it was a self-worth issue?
I think I was going through, I didn't know who I was, I don't think. I was somebody who felt like I was really crushing it in fitness. I was doing a bodybuilding thing. I was kind of transitioning from bodybuilding to not being a bodybuilder. Like, I was in this weird space. I was crushing it with my job. So I was like, I'm just going to go make as much money as I can. And I don't think I was prepared for a serious relationship. And I was intimidated by Taryn. There was a part of me that was intimidated by her.
I think it might be that a lot.
That was a big
hindsight.
part of it.
Yeah. Which is like almost like,
I don't know if I can hang.
Yeah. You probably didn't want what happened with your ex to happen again in terms of you not being able to be confident enough to be with someone.
That was part of it. But I remember we had, when we like, I don't remember when it was, because we reconnected, and then it ended up, I don't know, I was still scared. But I remember I texted her and said, hey, I'm not doing this bodybuilding thing anymore. Like, we're getting pizza next time we hang out, because I'm not doing this bodybuilding stuff anymore. And I remember that was like a big release for me, because I felt like I could be a normal human being again, which was weird. But bodybuilding's a whole thing. All right, last question, because I want us to stay on time here. The third and final question. And Alan, you're going to answer this one first, because you got this one. What do I do if my partner is insecure and doesn't take feedback well?
All relationship questions. Interesting.
I dig it.
Who knew?
Well, no, the first one wasn't. The first one was mindset. Mindset and two relationships.
True. Fair. Okay. If you have an insecure partner and they don't take feedback well, I would say two things. One, lead by example. Whatever it is. Make sure you're leading by example. And allow that to rub off. And it will. It most likely will. Not guaranteed, but it most likely will. And in terms of feedback, the permission question is super powerful. We do this every Sunday. The permission question is this. This is our check-ins. Our check-ins used to be like 3 or 4 hours long at the beginning of our relationship. Now it's literally one question. What about me, my character, or our relationship is bothering you lately that you wish didn't, but it still sort of does? And so what you can do is present this to your partner and say, I would like to do check-ins. I think it's important. And I know it'll help us improve our relationship. Instead of just asking them that question, and then they're going to go, oh, so you wanted me to ask you so you could tell me something? And that might be a bad thing. Instead of like the context of a check-in. Remember, it's like you're not going to prepare for a fight in UFC and then be shocked that you got punched in the face. It's the context of the octagon, the ring, is we fight here. And what I mean by that is a check-in, the context of that ring means we're going to say difficult truths. So the purpose of a check-in is difficult feedback. So even someone who's insecure, I think in the context of a check-in, particularly if you ask them first and they give you feedback first, I think you're going to be much better off. And then the last piece of this, very simply, is vulnerability. If you come at it with ego and fear, you're going to make the other person feel like they're being attacked rather than being vulnerable and showing that you're hurting. I think if you show that you're hurting, most people show hurt in a very toxic way. I know I've been guilty of this. By yelling or losing your temper or name calling or whatever. Deep underneath that is just, I'm hurt. And if you show the actual emotion of the hurt, they're going to feel much less attacked. They're going to feel like, if anything, they're going to feel empathetic to you hurting. Most likely. And so I know that's scary because it's vulnerable and you're afraid they're going to take advantage of that. And some people will, quite frankly. Hopefully not your partner. But that's my answer is try to show that you're hurting in your approach, and you're much less likely to trigger the other person's ego.
I love the check-in part. I think it's got to be something that's proactive and not reactive. It's something that, to your point, you have to kind of know, okay, we're doing our check-in tonight, tomorrow, like this. Let me prepare for feedback. Let me prepare for what I'm going to get. Let me prepare for what I'm going to give. It might get uncomfortable. It might get a little messy, but that's good, right? That's we're talking about what's real. So I love that. I think the check-in is always a great opportunity. I think the other thing, and you kind of mentioned it, that's why it's hard to go second on these ones, but leaning into feeling more than thought. I feel like, and I'm afraid, and I'm scared, and I'm whatever, versus there's two different conversations where If say Alan's running late a lot, there's two ways I can go. I can ego up and say, hey man, I can't work with somebody like this. Like I can't be a business partner. I can't. This isn't working. Like this isn't working for me. Versus, sometimes it just makes me feel like you don't value my time. Those are two different conversations. And one, Alan is going to say, well, like, dude, look at all the stuff I bring to the table. Like, what do you mean you can't work with me? Like, I've done this. Where the other one is, oh shit, man, I'm sorry. That's not my goal. It's not my intention to make you feel that way. Right. And it's just a completely different conversation. One allows you to communicate about feelings. Hopefully, I won't say hopefully without ego, because there'll be some ego, but can you control the ego? And the other one is more accusatory. Like, you suck because you're late, versus the way I'm internalizing what's happening here is this. What do you see from your perspective, and can we have a conversation about it? What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on all that?
Really strong.
Wow. What do you think? First Q&A episode is a success?
It was interesting.
It's a challenge.
It was interesting. It definitely a success. Yeah, it was challenging. Particularly going second is difficult.
Yeah, going second is very challenging.
Yeah. But it's good. You get a couple layers deeper.
Yeah.
Look, and thank you for all the questions.
Yes, please.
Keep the questions coming.
Keep them coming.
Please, yeah.
Because you never know. You never know if we say something on one of these episodes and you're like, I really wish I knew. I really wish they went deeper on that, or they would expound on what they just said, expand, whatever word it is. Please do reach out, and we will keep it anonymous, and we will keep your privacy. I promise. Nobody's going to know it was you. I promise.
I told Kev this earlier. I said if I had Next Level University when I was younger, it would have changed everything. And what I mean by that is not to toot Kevin and I's horn, but it is impossible to we're 34 and 33, and we're exposed to so many different people all over the world, and this is all we do. So when I was younger, I didn't do therapy, and I wasn't a coach, and I wasn't helping people with all these kinds of questions, and I didn't read all these books. I didn't know all this. And so I hope that everyone reaches out with questions, not because Kevin and I have all the answers, but because we probably have some answers that you might not, only because the context of our work. It's not because we're inherently better. It's because this is all we do. This is it. This is all we do. I've learned more from my clients than I've probably taught my clients. And what I mean by that is I have thousands of hours digging deep into people's lives. There's just awarenesses there that I never had when I was an engineer or when I was in school, or when I was a mathematician or whatever, semi-pro gamer, all the different hats I used to wear growing up. I needed to know this stuff. I remember I didn't even know what vulnerability meant. And now it's it's hard to imagine operating in this world without it. It's such a powerful tool for success in relationships and life. So if you have a question, please ask. I just, students only here, including Kevin and I. I mean, yeah, obviously we're guides and we're leading by example and we're teaching on this podcast, but I really want to encourage everyone to be a student. And honestly, I am too. I'm listening to Kevin's answers and seeing what lands for me.
Same.
And I think it's just pretty awesome. And I do know it would have changed my entire world. And I'm grateful this is what we get to do. So
likewise. Next Level Nation. We have a private Facebook group where you can ask questions. You can find peak performance partners. You can post about what you're going through. And most of all, and I think the most powerful, best thing about it is you can be your authentic you. It's private. We make sure that everybody in there is of growth mind and they are respectful and they're supportive. I want it to be the most supportive community in the world, and that is what we're aiming for. So link will be in the show notes. Join #NextLevelNation.
And the proof of the being supportive in there is we have blocked several people.
Yes, we have.
That were not supportive. They were disrespectful. Anyone who's disrespectful will be blocked. Straight up. Okay, so also every month, so this is our 13th. We actually just had our 1-year anniversary of monthly meetups, which is wild. So the 13th monthly meetup is going to be setting clear goals for 2023 that actually build belief. So a lot of times what happens is people set goals and then they don't hit them and then they lose belief. And the reason why is because they're setting a goal basically that is outside of their challenge skills sweet spot. They either deflate their capabilities or inflate their capabilities. We never learned how to set goals. At NLU, the entire NLU team, all my clients, we're setting specific goals. We have 90-day goals that roll up to 6-month goals that roll up to the year. And so how do you set goals in a way where you're the tortoise, not the hare, and you can actually slowly and incrementally build belief? Because at the beginning of this journey, if I had told Kev, 5 years ago, hey man, in 5 years, you're going to be a podcast coach and you're going to produce, your company's going to produce 25 other podcasts and you're going to be a top 100 self-improvement podcast and you're going to read books every day and you're going to track your habits every day and you're going to have clients all over the world and you're going to have a 20-person team, almost 20, and all this stuff. Kevin would have been like, what are you talking about, man? Because it's too much out of the gate. But if I slowly built him incrementally with these goals that actually slowly and incrementally build belief, it would be very different. And so I think a lot of people aim too high or too low. Either too low, it doesn't motivate them, or too high, it's too audacious and outrageous to where it doesn't build belief. It just crushes their self-esteem. So that monthly meetup, I think, will be very powerful.
Next Level Nation tomorrow on Friday for episode number 1187. The goal isn't to be fearless. It is to fear less. I know we talked a little bit about mindset and fear today, but I'm excited to do that episode. I did a post on that recently, so anytime I can take a social media post I do and then go deeper here, that is always one of my favorite things to do. As always, we love you, we appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you, and at NLU, we do not have fans, we have family. We will talk to you tomorrow.
And we'll see you at the next level.